What's up? If it shows you how spaced out I am with my videos right now, I'm recording this at the same week that I did the video where I gave the year impressions of the Lexus and what I've spent and everything, so I'm kind of spacing things out right now, but I'm finally getting around to changing the brakes on the Lexus. My rear passenger side tire was leaking, and when I took it in, they also noticed that my brake pads were running low. Recommended I change the brake calipers, or brake rotors and brake pads, sorry. So I'm going to get on doing that in the back today. I will be changing both the left and the right, but I'm only going to give you a tour of one side since both sides are going to be the same and I'm running short on daylight. Anyways, here's everything that you need and everything that I'm going to be using. You're going to need your 2 brake rotors for the back, your brake pads. I got Duralast Gold because that's what I'm running in the front. I've had no problems with it, so I figured I'd go the same for the back. It comes with 4 pads in the box, 2 for each side. Each brake rotor is 1 in here and 1 in here. You're going to need as well your socket set and a socket wrench. I got my torque wrench right here for when I'm tightening things up. You're going to need either a lug nut wrench like I have, or not necessarily a DeWalt one, but some sort of impact wrench. You're going to need your wheel lock if you need that. I have a front and brake rear caliper tool. You can borrow these from Autozone. They'll charge you, and then when you return it, you get it back. So it's pretty much a free loan so long as you return it. I have my brake lubricant, I have my jack, and I have some stuff to chock my front wheels. So I'm going to start as I did my other brake jobs. I'm going to pop the hood, and for now I'll just leave it cracked. Now before I get jacking it up, I'm going to throw some chocks under the wheels. And in most cases like this, I like to have my parking brake up, but since I'm going to be working on the back brakes, you want to have it down. Now before I actually start lifting the tire off the ground, I want to loosen up the lug nuts just a little bit, so I'm going to do that now. As you just saw there, I usually like to use my foot to get a bit of more pressure down there when I'm working on it. Like I said, you can use your impact driver, impact gun if you have one. For the last tire, I have to use my wheel lock, so I'm going to be using that. Just kind of goes in right here. Simple enough, and then you just use that to loosen up the tire. Now I'm going to jack up the rear. I'm going to jack it up from the differential. Now the most important thing that you do here is you want to make sure that you don't jack it up on the drain plug. Now that I have that lifted up, you can see that my tire is no longer making contact with the ground, so it is good to remove. Here I have my 21mm socket. That's what I'm going to use on the impact gun that I'm using right here. It's the DeWalt impact gun. And I will set it to loosen and remove the tire. When removing a wheel with a wheel lock, I always like to use the wheel lock and the actual wrench itself. I don't like to use an impact because it could strip it if it comes loose. I like to hand loosen it once it comes loose like that. And your wheel will come off just like that. Now earlier I mentioned popping the hood open. You're going to want to open up that and get underneath the hood. Over here, you have your brake fluid. It says brake fluid on it. I'm going to take this. I'm not going to take it off. I'm just going to leave it cracked like that, because when you squeeze your piston, it'll send some brake fluid back up, and if you do that without opening this, it'll send in back pressure. Just make sure that you don't get any debris in there. You can see how dirty it is underneath it here, so that's why I leave it cracked and not fully open and exposed, but I'm just going to leave it like that. In the meantime, you can see my brake rotor right here, and the brake pad is right here, which is what I'm going to be replacing along with the rotor. So I'm going to take off this bolt right here and take off this bolt. You can see there's still some grease from before on here. Just going to set that aside here, but don't lose it. So that bolt that I showed you at the top, on the top of the caliper bracket up here, I didn't remove it. I just loosened it, and I took out this bottom one entirely, as you can see. Looks like I can swivel up the caliper right here, which saves me a bit of time. You can just do that to work around it, or you can remove the whole thing. I'm just going to remove the whole thing just to make it easier, so I'm going to take out that top bolt as well. Just to keep it out of the way, I set my brake caliper up here, so it's just sitting there. Next, I'm going to pop out the pads, and then I'm going to remove the bracket that holds this in so I can get out the rotor. Now the pads are pretty easy to get out. You can usually just wedge in a screwdriver or something, or just pop them out with your hands. You can see that mine just pop out. You can see all the brake dust built up on here, which is all over my hands now, great. But yeah, these aren't terrible. I definitely thought that they were worse, but they're getting close to it. You can see the wear line right there. It's getting pretty close to being done. I'm going to do the same thing on the back. Just pop it out, kind of wiggle it out with my hands. And there you go. Now what you have left here is your caliper bracket. There's 2 bolts on the back right here. I'll show them to you now. 1 and 2. Where's 2? Right back here. So I'm going to take those out, and then that'll come off of here. It's also attached to the dust shield, so just be mindful of that. Just like that, I used the 17mm socket in the back, and the brake caliper bracket came clean off. So the rotor, see it's loose right here. You just pull it off. It's as simple as that. Gonna open up my new brake rotors. Look how nice and good that looks. Anyways, installation is just as simple as removal was. You just put it right back on. Perfect. Once that's on, you just want to put your brake caliper bracket back on. You want to secure it back in with the 17mm bolts that you took out before. Now once this is secure, it should not have any play at all. You can see I'm tugging and nothing's coming off. After that, you want to remove your clips that hold in your brake pads. I never took out my old ones, so that's why they're still in there. So I'm popping them out. Might need a flathead screwdriver to do this. Mine feel like they're a bit stuck, and I might... Nope. There's one. Or part of one. I don't know. No, there's one on each side. Never mind. So it looks like there's 4 total clips. Just pop them all out, because your replacement kit should come with new clips. There's number 3. Number 4 doesn't want to come out. Number 4. Next, you want to take your brake pads. I'm going to open up my box here. Here are the clips that I just told you about. And here's one set of pads. You can see, and I'll show you here, new pads versus old pads. Old pads had some life left in them, but the new ones have a lot more. So in some vehicles, there's a pad to go on the inside and a pad to go on the outside. In this case, you can see they're exactly the same, so they can go on either side. You'll notice though with your clips that there's a difference. One is a little tab on the inside and one is a little tab on the outside. You just want to make sure that when you put in these tabs, this little tab right here is facing the outside, or else it'll scratch against your brake rotor. Now I'm going to pop in the clips. Now here I have my little package of brake lubricant. I'm going to put that on each of the clips, and I'm going to slide my brake pads in like they came out. Same goes for the inside and the outside brake pads. I just put a bit of grease right there, a bit of grease right here, and slid it right in. I thought it was recording, but apparently I didn't hit record, so it just slides in like that. I kind of had to push it in here first and then clip it top and bottom, so it just kind of feeds in like that. You just do the same for front and back, and it's pretty simple. Now before you put your caliper back on, you have to compress your piston, which is why I cracked the brake fluid reservoir, as I showed you earlier. You're going to want to either push really hard on here, or use a tool like I got. Like I said, I'm loaning this one out from Autozone. Basically what happens is this part goes on the inside of the caliper, this part pushes in on the piston, and you just crank this so it expands and pushes the piston in. I'll try to get that on video, but it'll be kind of hard because my tripod isn't exactly the best. Alright, so just for a quick frame of reference, here's the caliper tool in use. This little piece pushes down here. When you twist it, it pushes this up against here and compresses your piston. You can see it's pretty flat in there right now. It should fit over top of my pads, sorry. So I'm going to give that a shot now, see if it fits. And sure enough, it slides right over top. So that's good. Before I put this back on, I'm going to put a little bit of grease on each side of the pad. It's not necessary, but it helps to do it for when you're taking them off later. Make sure when you're putting on the grease, if you're following along with this, that you put the grease on the outside of the pad, which has this silver part here, because if you put on the inside, you probably will not have brakes when you need them. So make sure you do that right. And these bolts, like I showed earlier, still do have some grease on them. I'm just going to throw on a little bit more and then I'm going to put them back in. So you can see I have the 2 bolts in here now. Looks like I lost a little dust cap to cover up for grease there. I'm going to look for that if I can't find it, whatever. But yeah, I'm just going to tighten it down. I read somewhere online that they should be 80 foot-pounds. I don't know if that's right. I don't know if that's over-tightened, under-tightened, but that's what I'm going to go with. So that's why I have my torque wrench. I'm going to tighten those down now. So now that I have my new brake rotors in, new brake pads, my caliper is mounted back up, I'm going to throw the wheel back on. I'm going to do this the same way that I took it off. I'm just going to hand tighten them probably, just because I like to hand tighten them when I'm putting them back on. Make sure it's tight though if you're doing that. And then I will change the other one and take it on a test drive. Now I have all of my lug nuts hand tightened. Just remember that when you actually put them on all the way, you don't want to over tighten them. You want to make sure it's able to get off next time you need to. You also don't want to make sure that it's you want to make sure that it isn't under tightened. Because if it's under tightened, you could lose your wheel, and you don't want either of those. So I'm going to finish putting those on now. And once you have your wheel back on, you'll know that it's tight because it won't shake at all. So that's not shaking at all. Good work in my eyes. Looks good to go. Take it on a test drive later and make sure that I got everything done. But in the meantime, I'll change the other brake. Like I said, I'm not going to record that because I just showed you how to do it on this side. Alright, well this side took me a bit longer because there was some rust that I had to sand off of my brake caliper, but the pad seems to be in good now. Gonna lower the Lexus back down. That was a bit more abrupt than I hoped for, but it's lowered. Now you can see the brake fluid level is higher than it was before. That's because I squeezed it back from the piston. So I'm going to put that back on, make sure that it's on tight because you don't want any leaking. Going to close the hood and then I'm going to take it on a test drive. Alright, well I just got back from the test drive. You can see the outside of the brakes are a little bit worn in now just because I hit the brakes hard a couple times just to test it, but it seems like they are running just fine. Pardon my neighbor's dog barking. But yeah, stopped the car, so I can't complain. For now, they seem good. If anything else flares up, which I hope it doesn't, I'll address that. But for the time being, that's the end of this video.